All right, welcome back to another very special episode of Dr. J Radio Live. I'm your host, Dr. J, broadcasting from the city of angels. Or is it? How about city of beasts? City of addicts, city of ghosts, city of ETs, or just city of fuck-ups. Whatever you want to call it, hey, I'll take it all from you. All right, well, today we have a very special guest. This is the first time I've spoken to him on air. Obviously, we talked a couple times leading up to this today. He has a very impressive resume in ufology. He's done a lot for this field, and I'm very proud to introduce the one and only Mr. Lester Velez. Les, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. J. It's good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. The pleasure's all ours, mine and the people who are about to hear you. Now, let's go to the basics. How did you get started? Because for me, it was sightings and then an obsession.
Yeah, my situation is similar. When I was 11 years old and I was living in Connecticut, it was a late October evening, and I was coming back in the house, and it was dusk already, and the over the tree line, not too far from my house, this oval whitish object was kind of moving very slowly over the treetops and not making any sound that I could hear, and it scared the hell out of me. And I ran in a house to try to get my father to come out. And finally, by the time I got him to come out, it was gone. And he said, well, it was probably a beacon of light reflecting
Swamp
off
glass.
a cloud. So, at that time, we lived about 45 minutes outside of New York City. And, I guess searchlights could possibly travel that far, but I didn't buy it. And shortly thereafter, I went to the library, the local library, and picked up a book by George Adamski. And started to read about UFOs and the Venusians and things of that nature. And I was absolutely fascinated with the whole topic. And that kind of was the impetus for me to really get into this. But, as things happen, you become a little bit older and girls become a little bit more important in your life.
Yeah,
as an
damn right.
and so I kind of forgot about it, and went to college. Eventually went in the service, got married, and
Where
was
did
doing
you,
that whole thing.
What branch of the military did you serve?
Yeah, I was in the Army. I was a field artillery officer, and didn't see anything while I was in the service, but it was a incredible experience to begin with. I was very lucky. It was during the Vietnam situation, and I had gotten orders for Vietnam, and actually moved out to California, where my wife was going to stay with her sister.
You're in my hood, huh? Or you were, or
Yeah.
you are now?
Well, I'll tell you the rest of the story here. So I was out there for a week before I was supposed to go over to Vietnam, and I get a call from a buddy of mine back at battalion headquarters, because I was stationed at Fort Dix in New Jersey at the time, and he says, this major at the Pentagon is looking for you, and you need to call him. And I said, okay. So I called this major at the Pentagon, and he says, well, your tour of duty's been cut by 2 months. Therefore, we have to give you a choice of whether or not you want to go to Vietnam. And at that time, this was near the end of the Vietnam situation, and it was really, really bad. And so he says, if you don't go, somebody's going to have to go in your place. And I said, well, I tell you what, I'm not going. And I hope the next son of a gun is as lucky as I am, because
I know. 50,000 Americans dead, probably millions of Vietnamese, Laos, and Burmese just dead. Very,
Well,
very
it
horrible.
was. I mean, our own troops were fragging officers, and
Ooh.
matter of fact, one of the officers that was in my battalion back at Fort Dix came back over, and he was a West Point graduate. He got shot in the butt by
Ah.
his own troops because they didn't want to go out in the field anymore. I mean, it was so bad. It was so bad. So anyway, I so then the major says to me, he said, "Where do you want to be stationed?" And I said, "Well, I'm out here on the West Coast. Put me down at Fort Ord in Monterey." So I get my orders, and they send me all the way back to Fort Dix in New Jersey. And anyway, in 1985,
Hmm.
picked up the family, and I had two daughters by then, and we moved to San Jose, California.
Ah,
And
NorCal.
yep, and we were there for 32 years until I just recently moved in 2017
Let me
to
guess.
Texas.
Housing prices.
Oh, well, I tell you what, I retired. Okay.
Okay, okay.
So, and I wanted to be close to one of my daughters, and one of my daughters lives down here in Texas. So it was kind of a no-brainer. And of course, no state income tax, and the price of gas this week
Oh,
at
jeez.
one of the
I'm
stations was a
paying over
dollar
$4
eighty-nine.
for 87 gasoline. If I want
I know.
91 octane, I'm gonna be paying like 4.89 a gallon.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. It's
Phew.
crazy. But here,
Yeah.
$1.89. It's not too bad.
Now,
So,
maybe you could, before we, this is a little off topic. By the way, thank you for your service. Even though you didn't head over
thank
there,
you.
you were, enlisted. You weren't drafted, right? You were enlisted.
Oh yeah, I was in ROTC.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
gone to the University of Vermont
I
and was in the
respect that.
ROTC program.
I'm blood military from my father and my brothers. Serving his country now. He finished his tours of duty, in the Corps, and now he's a private military contractor in Kuwait. Which I know if he's
Hmm.
listening, he's gonna give me shit because I'm not supposed to be really telling this stuff. But
Yeah,
regardless,
don't want to.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, now, uh,
so
keep going.
anyway, to continue, unless you have a question, you have a
No,
question there.
no, 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 no. I'll,
Okay, so so when I moved out there in 1985, I picked up. I got a subscription to the San Jose Mercury News, and I was reading through it and come across this article that Stanton Freeman was going to
my
speak at San Jose
great
City College
friend,
about UFOs and
godfather
the
of
government
ufology.
cover up.
Godfather of ufology, great friend of mine, one of the first guests I've ever had.
Great man, great
Oh,
man.
yes, he was.
Unfortunately, he's gone on to
You
better
know,
things, I think.
he's one of six people who I've interviewed and then passed away before they did another interview.
Hmm.
Starting with Dr. Roger Lear, then astronaut Edgar Mitchell, Jim Mars, Richard
Yeah.
Shaw, and Stan Friedman. And I know there's one I'm missing, but regardless, the point is I did an interview, we planned for the future, and then I get a call a week later or 2 weeks later, and so I just because when I grew up. And to me, ETs, UFOs were the most important thing. I mean, I was so obsessed before even age 4. He was like a god to me. You know what I mean? You could take me and introduce me to any star, which I've come across in my young life because I was very fortunate to have family who have know people or are related. So like Tom Hanks was around when I was a kid at family reunions and came to see my school play, and I could never get starstruck. But when Stan Friedman, when he was on anything, I made sure I watched him, and whenever he was around, I'd go travel to speak with him because to me he was the star.
Oh yeah. I mean, his take on the whole subject was refreshing, and something that there's not many people out there that
No.
could handle the debunkers the way he did, and come up with the catchy little statements that he could make. Just
Oh yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, he
And
was fantastic. And one of the great things about him was, I think it was almost 6 decades he got involved in this in late 50s or early 60s, but he was really involved. And this was the era where you had Philip Klass. I'm sure you might have heard from Travis Walton. Philip Klass can
oh
kiss
yes,
my ass. All these super hardcore debunkers, which would not look at the facts and just attack your character. Stanton never lost his
that's
cool.
interesting. You mentioned Phil Klass, and I actually had a couple of scotches with him
Mm.
in Albuquerque at the UFO symposium, the MUFON UFO symposium that he actually attended, and this goes back a number of years ago, and he was delightful. I mean, I actually had a very nice conversation with him.
Just like Michael Shermer and Robert Schaefer, they're my friends. They are my
Mhm.
friends. We speak off air all the time. We don't get along as far as topics and beliefs,
Mhm.
but they are good people. Now, yes, their agenda, like Robert Schaefer, he has a blog, Bad UFOs, and he has every single thing, whether it be an abduction or a sighting, he has a solution for it. For instance, I'll give you an example. The Socorro, New Mexico, remember Lonnie Zamora?
Mhm. Oh,
Okay.
sure. Mhm.
His explanation was it was some grad students who built a hot air balloon and they were wearing white overalls and they landed. When they saw a police officer, they got scared and then took off in their hot air balloon, a small hot air balloon. Really? So you mean to tell me that these graduate students were about 3 to 4 feet tall, bald headed, large black eyes, and their balloon, didn't change shape, like a balloon was it would, because it's
Mhm.
flimsy as opposed to a craft which is kind of solid. And also, remember, it had a very unique symbol on it. So, these bullshit explanations to me don't fly. If you,
Absolutely,
After
absolutely. It's
today,
just
if you're
amazing.
if you're interested enough, I'll text you a link that I hosted a debate with Stanton Friedman and Robert Schaefer. Oh, you'd love it because Stanton just kills Robert Schaefer.
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. Send me the link. That'd be great.
I will. I will.
So,
Now let me
so
continue to ask what you
yeah,
were on. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So anyway, I went to hear him speak at San Jose City College, and I expected to see a handful of people there. The auditorium was full. There must have been like 300 people there. And and of course, he did a fantastic job during his lecture. Afterwards, MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, had a table out in the foyer, and they were talking about their monthly journal and becoming a member. And so I decided I'm going to sign up. And to get this journal, I want to start reading more about this whole UFO situation. Well, it comes to pass that this wasn't enough for me, and I became a field investigator. And from that is what eventually sprung the OPUS, the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support, because almost without exception, the cases that I got involved with turned out to be abduction type cases.
Mm.
And these people talked to me and told me, they were super concerned about what had happened to them, and they wanted to know if there was other people that I was familiar with that had similar things going on in their lives. And I told them that I did. The next thing I know, I'm facilitating a support group that met once a month in San Jose. And there, I tell you, I had the most incredible feedback and information that is, more that you could have gotten anywhere, from books. You couldn't get all this from books. It just, these people were so impacted and so sincere about their situations and their stories that it just really impacted me. And I can tell you a couple of the stories that came out of those sessions.
Yes,
And,
as a matter of fact, before you do, I already got the first
mhm.
question in the chat for you, which relates to this. Ready?
Okay, sure.
Nicholas Cashmore, is there a very strange abduction story that you can recall?
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
let's hear it.
This couple in the Santa Cruz area
Mm-hmm.
of Northern California were in a place called Butano State Park. And they were picnicking up there, and they were coming, and Butano State Park is near on the coast, and it goes from the coast, and it gradually goes up to a more mountainous area. They had hiked up into that area and were coming down out of there, and this area is very well wooded, and by the time they were coming down the hill, it could be very dark, even though, it's still light outside. But because of the forest, it can be extremely dense and dark. So as they started to come down out of there, they noticed this light over the ocean. And it caught their attention, and they started to observe it, and the light started to get bigger and bigger and bigger until this thing was literally over their head, and it was a triangular craft.
Oh.
And so they observed this thing, and it kind of then proceeded past them into this canyon area behind where they were, and it sat there. And it kind of moved up and down very slowly. And they noticed another light over the ocean. And again, the same scenario where this thing started to come in, and it was another triangular craft. The first one, they felt that they were observing it. The second one, they felt it was observing them. And they kind of freaked out, and they moved back under this big pine tree. Mm-hmm. And this thing continued on into this canyon behind where they were. This happened 3 more times, and these craft were just sitting there, and they were probably each one about 100 feet
when I'm thinking of
length.
triangle craft, I'm literally thinking of the Belgium UFOs. You recall that, the wave?
Yep. Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
So would you say they're similar as far as shape, or and just 100 feet? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. And so they all just sat there for a while, doing this kind of undulating movement as they lined up, and then they all literally went vertical, all 5 of them in a row. This vertical line, and then it's like they went around a corner, but there was no corner, and then they disappeared. It was just like poof, they just vanished. Well, so they continued down the path, and the next thing, 3 hours later, they're sitting in a restaurant in Pescadero, which is up the road from Butano State Park. Mm-hmm. They don't know how they got there. They had 3 hours of missing time.
Yeah.
So they came to our support group meeting, mm-hmm. and one of the things that they basically came down with afterwards was this rash. And so they went to a doctor, and one doctor said, well, it looks something topical. Not sure what it is. It doesn't look like poison oak, which is very prevalent up in the, that area, or poison ivy. Not sure what it is. It's a very fine almost pimply-looking rash. And so then that didn't satisfy them, so they went to another doctor, and he says, well, it's something internal, possibly. And so they took pictures of it, of the rash, and they brought it to the support group meeting, and they passed the photographs around. And almost without exception, the people in the room said that they had a similar type of a rash.
You know, the
At one
only
time or
case
another.
that I personally know, but it wasn't, it was just a rash. I mean, these were like severe radiation burns, was the Cash Landrum incident.
Right. Yeah.
But that wasn't just a rash, as
Yeah.
you know. I mean,
Yeah.
so horrible. You know, all
hmm
three, the two ladies and I believe the grandson, were all hospitalized.
Oh yeah. They suffered some real issues
And
for
I
sure.
believe it was Betty Cash who was the one who went the closest. She
hmm
really suffered. I mean, her she had like blisters on her face. I mean, she could almost barely open her eyes, and it started all because of a rash, and then it moved quickly into
hmm
vomiting and everything else associated with radiation
Yeah,
burns.
and I followed up with these people, and they're both okay today.
Mm.
And this happened, oh gosh, in the mid '90s when this occurred, and
Ooh, that's
so
also in
it's
'97 when we
yeah,
had that giant triangle or boomerang in Arizona.
yeah,
March
oh yeah,
13th,
absolutely, the Phoenix
1997.
Lights,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So of course, these craft were nowhere near that size, but the bottom line is it was a pretty spectacular event for these people. Uh, and I think it was during that particular meeting that one of the people in the group said, "Well, I've seen you before," talking to me. and I said, "Really?" I said, "Where? At the supermarket, at the gas station, blah blah blah." And he said, "No, I saw you aboard the craft."
Huh.
And
Yeah.
so I kind of blew it off. I just didn't, I have no conscious recollection of anything happening like that. And I've actually been regressed 3 times to kind of look at that whole situation. I've had numerous past lives, but nothing has come up with regard to alien interaction at all.
Maybe not yet. You know what I mean? Because something has to explain this obsession that I have. I cannot. I could say that I've not been abducted, but have I? I've never gone through hypnotherapy. I don't
hmm
have
hmm
dreams where I recall events of meeting ETs or anything like that. But as we said about an hour and a half ago, that so many people, when they're abducted, they'll be, for instance, in their car. They'll start to see a craft approaching, slowing down, and then they start panicking. The car stops, usually, and then the car all of a sudden turns on and they see the craft going away. They don't know they missed 6 hours or whatever it be until they start having dreams and regression. And it just seems that some people, well, we know a small portion has conscious recall where they don't need hypnotherapy. But I do know there's a lot more people that have been taken that don't know, and a lot of ETs that abductees that I've spoken to who have communicated with them say that the people who have been taken that don't recall will know when the time is right. Like something will happen here, and all of a sudden, all these people will come, wake up, and be like, "I remember, they told me this 50 years ago."
Yeah,
Uh,
sure,
There's already
exactly.
another question before I wanted to get to a couple more things about your other stories and
mm
also
mm.
all the places you're involved in. This comes from, let's see where it went because I got it more. Okay, Lasha Senyak. Has he ever come across a case of human mutilation?
Not personally, no. I'm aware of them, however. Linda Moulton Howe, who actually is a member of the OPUS advisory board,
Ah,
has
great
talked
friend of
about.
mine, actually.
Pardon?
She's a great friend of mine.
Oh, great. Yeah,
Yeah,
super lady.
yeah, she
Very
is.
good.
Very intelligent, been involved in this field for what, 40 years, I think? 40.
Oh, at least as long as I have.
Yeah,
That's for
yeah.
sure.
So I'm glad you have that. That caliber of someone as well as you within your group. Now, how many groups do you host?
Well, the unique thing about what we do now is that we have Opus has instituted a confidential online support group, and we have over 200 people in the group from around the world. Basically, we have people from Australia, from South America, from the UK, and then people come in and out all the time, but they can chat with one another 24/7 if they'd like, and as I say, we constantly are bringing in new people that have had a very upsetting experience and are looking for validation. They're looking for support. And excuse me, this has proved to be really a great vehicle because most of the time there aren't local support groups.
That's true. That's very true. Now, before I ask the two questions, which you started on a couple stories that you heard in your class in your groups, right? Can you continue with what you were about to tell us the other stories?
Sure. Yeah, there's two more that I'd like to mention, but I also have some actual audio tapes of people that I think I can play here, and if it works out. One story was of a woman who came to us as an adult who told us a story about during her childhood when she was in school that she was walking home with three of her friends, and this object came in,
Mm-hmm.
flew right over them, and they actually observed these beings looking down out of the craft down at them.
Wow.
And we did a hypnosis session with her, and what had transpired afterwards was that she was abducted multiple times
Mm-hmm.
from her home. She wasn't abducted at the time of the sighting, but subsequently was abducted. And this was one of those instances where she remembers going through the wall of her house, right through the wall. And so, I mean, these are the kind of stories that, what kind of physics, are we dealing with here? And is it, a physical, is it in a physical nature
Mm-hmm.
that this person is going through there, or is this a ethereal, your soul is going through there, or your consciousness is going through the wall? It's not you in the physical realm.
I have normally, my guests tell the stories, but I have a relevant story if you'd like to hear.
Sure.
Do you know who Preston Dennett is?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, great friend of mine, and written, geez, almost 30 books by now. But the book, because I live in California, that is my absolute favorite. And anyone who lives in a state that he wrote a book like UFOs over Arizona, Nevada, New York,
Hmm.
etc., everyone, I strongly suggest buying those books. And if you live in California, buy UFOs over California. So this one lady, she was always being taken. She had a 7-year-old son, and she was worried that he'd be taken. Well, the night before, she recalls that he was on the craft, he was taken. So at breakfast time, she was worried that the kid will say something and, maybe fear. So she didn't know how to introduce the topic in the morning. So she asked very politely, or not politely, just without really raising suspicions of ETs or, UFOs or anything. And she said, oh, honey, how'd you sleep last night? And he says, great. And then he went back to eating his cereal. And she thought, oh, he doesn't remember. This is good. And he goes, my alien friends came to visit me again. And she goes, uh-oh, he knows. And she goes, but they always get mad at me. And she said, why? He said, because every time they take me through a wall, I see a bunch of small colored balls. I'm assuming not atoms, but maybe atoms, right? And I always want to stay between the wall to look at them, and they always say you can't. It's dangerous. You have to get move forward and out of the wall. Now, a 7-year-old making up a story using children's words about going through a wall and seeing a bunch of colored small balls. Well, to me, it sounds like the kid went through a wall.
That reminds me of another story that happened near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I have a friend that's down in Florida who lived right near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, in the, I guess it was in the 50s. No, 60s. It was the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And to make a very long story short, he he was taken through the window, and he was like 4 or 5 years old at the time. And
let me guess,
his
floating
blanket,
through the window, but he went through the window, right?
He went through the window. But the other thing that happened to him, his blanket that he had, most children have their special blanket, right? It got stuck in the window.
In the window, literally, like
in the window,
part outside the house and part inside.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
And men in black were involved. The military was involved. They actually took the window.
Wow.
And this is it's an amazing story, and I think you can actually see he wrote this down and actually published it. And I don't know the title of the book, but it's on Amazon supposedly. And I'll have to get that out.
Think of the book name or the author's name. Just call me or text me, and I definitely would want to read that. Cause
his name is Jim Wittenberg.
Let me write that down.
Wittenberger. Jim Wittenberger.
How do you spell that?
Wittenberger.
T-T-E-R. Wait, after T-T? E-N?
Yeah, E-N.
Berg. B-U-R-G?
No, B-E-R.
B-E-R-G. Got it. Okay, I'm going to write
Jim
window.
Yeah.
Because this reminds me of Jim Sparks, where even though he didn't have a physical object stuck in the window, the thing that really made him realize that these weren't just dreams is when he not only had mud on his bare feet, he saw his own footprints through a sliding door with half his foot outside and half his foot inside, which is impossible unless you have the door open.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing physics, I tell you.
Yeah.
There's no question about it.
Well, the 3 DoD films that were released, the Go Fast, the Gimbal, and the Tic Tac UFO, right? To me, that was the biggest thing as far as disclosure. And one of the craft that fell from the... you might know this. You were in the military, and you probably do know this, that the radar ceiling is 80,000 feet. So anything higher than that, we're not, tracking via radar, right? We're not tracking through something, say, 160,000 or 110,000 feet. Well, these craft were, I think if it wasn't Commander Fravor, it was someone on the USS Nimitz or the USS Princeton, because as you know, they travel in a fleet, right? There's the destroyer,
Right.
there's the aircraft carrier, and the frigate, and things like that. Well, they've been tracking them for a couple weeks, and they said these things were raining UFOs, and one of them dropped over 80,000 feet, but since we could only track it from 80,000 and below, and literally flew to 50 feet above sea level and stopped on a dime. No inertia, no damage, nothing like that. 0.57 seconds, 27,000 miles an hour. I mean, wow. Almost 80,000 feet, if not a lot more because we don't know. It's a very scary prospect. And remember, there was no sonic boom,
No,
which goes
none.
to show that wait a minute, we're not dealing with technology that we're used to.
Yeah, and it's interesting that from To the Stars Academy,
Tom
Lou
DeLong,
Elizondo,
yeah,
yeah, and Lou Elizondo,
that's right. And I know Lou. I
they
we were
they
supposed to.
they feel that they've got a real good handle on how they're doing it.
Well, I've
And
always
I
believed Bob Lazar, right? I always thought his explanation of gravity as propulsion, and then the craft envelops itself in gravity, which can make it fly in the water at the same speed as in the air or in space or wherever, and he explains that they use Einstein-Rosen bridges, wormholes to travel from point A to B, all from gravity, and that to me makes sense. Now, is there other forms of these? Because we have so many different species that are visiting us, so many different craft. Is there another method that they can use? Absolutely. Is it a method that we're using regularly? No. They're not burning chemicals to create a reaction of propulsion and pushing something. These things are traveling super fast. It's almost inconceivable that we can, let see them, let alone have a chance at chasing them. But as you know, Commander Fravor could not get near it, and he couldn't even get a
right,
radar lock on. This craft was so fast it kept breaking the lock.
yeah. Now, and this is the kind of thing that what got me interested initially was the nuts and bolts of the UFO phenomena. How are these craft operating? What's the technology behind it? What can we learn from it? How can we utilize that they're using in some way, shape, or form? But I think the important part that was forgotten for so long, besides the nuts and bolts, is what's happening to people that are having these experiences with quote unquote these aliens, and who better to try to ferret out what's going on than to talk to the people that feel that they've been abducted and had
Les, you
interaction.
literally read my mind. Every time I have a show that I'm speaking to someone who's had contact via abduction or just straight contact, or when we're talking about abductions, I always say the same thing. I said, if you want to know what an ET looks like, how they speak, how they smell, how they move, what the inside of the ship looks like, all that, I said, don't read it in a book. Talk to the people or listen to the people who were taken. They're the first hand witnesses. These people are the ones everyone should be listening to. Fortunately, 2020, we are far further along than, say, the 80s or even before that when when the
Oh,
debunkers
absolutely.
just considered us crazy. And the sad thing is no one was crazy. Yet when they're told they're crazy over and over and over again by their spouse, their parents, their children, their friends, and then, psychiatrists, psychologists, and people like Philip Glass and Robert Schaefer and all these people, the sad thing is these people, start to believe that, their mind played tricks on them. They didn't see what they saw, and they are crazy.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that most of these people exactly feel like, oh, am I going crazy? And therefore, a lot of them, get themselves to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. But then they're told, well, no, you're not crazy. And so then what? And so that's where they're left in this lurch. And a lot of times they can't talk to anybody. I mean, not even family members, because they get ostracized, or people think that they are crazy. And so, and even MUFON for years and years was not interested in talking to abductees. But in the mid 90s, 2000 area, they actually started to listen to abductees, and I was actually one of the first people in MUFON to start an organization called the Abduction Experiencer Research Committee.
Under MUFON, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
That's right. And we anybody that called in to MUFON back then was directed basically to me. And people were looking for assistance, in some way, shape, or form, whether it was a local support group or a hypnotherapist, or subsequently now get on our online support group. So it's super important that they have now a vehicle where they can get the kind of assistance that they need, and now OPUS has since the A.E.R.C has basically gone away, but what's taken its place with Kathleen Martin is the A.R.T, the Experiencer Research Team, which also I'm a member of. And so it's and by the way, I don't know if you know George Medich, who was a pitcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's also the head of that A.R.T group of MUFON now. So and they're doing some fine work as well.
How do you spell his last name?
Medich. Meditch.
Itch. You know what? I'm gonna look for that person. Now I got one question of my own, which is just a short answer, and then there's a question in the chat again for you. First of all, how many people through your tenure and through all the groups, people that have come in and gone, and just in general outside of the groups that you've spoken to, how many people, just estimate, have you spoken to that are abductees?
Oh goodness! Oh, probably thousands. I get 2 to 3 a week. So, and I've been doing this since 1991.
Almost 30 years, 29 years. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's significant. I mean, if you look at what the Roper poll that
1 in
Bud
40?
Hopkins and David Jacobs put out there, that like 4% of the population.
Yeah, 1 in 40. Yeah.
Yeah, or 1 in 50, one of those numbers. But yeah, it's a huge number.
It really is. It really is, because if we're using that, it's not a million. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
Okay, now in the time we were talking, a second chat question popped up. Let me read the first, so we stay in order here. Let me find it for you. Hold on, I don't think that much passed, so I have it. Okay, what is the best way to support someone who has been through an abduction? That's from Lasha Senyak.
Sure. Well, I think that probably the best way is to be able to have them speak with other people that have had similar circumstances. And that's what the online support group that OPUS has been very effective. I mean, I get things from people saying, God bless you that, you have this service. And then we also, make available to them if they want to have hypnotherapy done. We try to get them hooked up with hypnotherapists. So for us, and I do a lot of personal talking to these people and trying to understand that they're not alone, that they're not crazy. And as a matter of fact, MUFON funded a study that I was involved with called the Omega-3 study, where we took 71 people that were abductees and 51 people that were a control group. And we came up with some interesting information, which I can go over with
please
you.
Do, yeah.
And see what our conclusions were. So let me flip to that real quick here.
No problem.
Okay, so in general, I'm just going to read this right out of the report.
Sure.
Abductees experiencers profile differently than do comparison counterparts on a number of general psychological and specific neurological variables, yet there are remarkable similarities between the experiential group and the comparison group. It should be noted that in no case did experiencers or comparison group participants show any signs of mental illness or personality disorder. So that's number one. Okay, and that's the probably the number one question that the experiencers themselves have. Am I crazy? What's going on?
Yeah.
One of the other factors is that they talk about fantasy proneness. A lot of the debunkers talk about fantasy proneness. So fantasy proneness does not appear to play a differentiating role between the experiential and the control group. However, sensitivity to alternate realities and early and reoccurring paranormal or psi experiences seem to play a role in the abduction experience. So these people, have a level of sensitivity that kind of opens them up. But again, it's nowhere near being anything, no psychopathological issues whatsoever. Now, here's another interesting one. Childhood conflict, psychosocial tension, and abuse and trauma more than likely facilitated dissociative coping style in later life. How much a part dissociation plays in the abduction experience remains an open question. But the Ring and Rosing were another team that looked at this thing back in the early 90s. Abuse, trauma, dissociation pathway remains a viable descriptive, if not explanatory principle. So again, I think there was somebody, I forget the woman that came up with this, that there was sexual abuse or something like that, early on. What we're saying here in the study is that, there could be tension at home and, some type of a trauma, not necessarily having anything to do with the sexual abuse, but, conflicts that normally happen, with a lot of people. And it causes people to disassociate a little bit. But again, it's not a psychopathology whatsoever. So again, it's putting you on a little different path, if you will. And so these are the kind of things that are, we would like to actually look even further into some of this. The next thing, both experience with and interest in the abduction phenomena have impact on how one's body is perceived to function, how one views the world and one's purpose in it, and how one defines or redefines one's faith, tradition, and beliefs. In essence, both experience with and interest in contact seem to change one's sense of self and one's worldview, and that's very true. Most of the people that have had an experience, they come back with things like, you have to be much more concerned with the environment. You know, we got to take
Worry
care
about
of we got to
nuclear
take
weapons, things like that.
you got to
Yeah.
take care of the planet. You got to take care of the planet. You got to, have clean water and good air to breathe, and we have to be better with one another. Be kinder. And so
And there's nothing wrong with
it's a,
that.
oh,
If
absolutely not,
you
absolutely
are
not.
kinder
It's
to other people, you will live a happier life.
Then abductees experiences believe that there is a sentient, purposive alien intelligence at play in their lives and at work in the world. What the intelligence's goals are seem to be more beneficent than malevolent, more benign than malignant.
Hmm.
This, though, remains an open question and a point of doubt in the minds and hearts of some abductees, experiencers, and some comparison control participants. It also remains a point of contention among abduction researchers. And that's true. I mean, you have people like Bud Hopkins, which was, most of these people are good guys, and David Jacobs saying they're all bad. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
probably like
yeah.
here. It's probably here on Earth that we have good people and we got bad people. So,
Well, I
so you,
think it's foolish to think they're all benevolent.
yeah,
They're either benevolent or malevolent, and the malevolent ones could either be looking to harm us as a whole or just are greedy for their own selves without caring what they do to us on a micro level. So,
yeah. I mean,
absolutely. There's
yeah. I mean,
yin
I don't know if you
yang,
caught.
good, bad.
Yeah,
I just think it applies everywhere in the multiverse.
I agree. I agree. I don't know if you saw the Project Blue Book episode last
I
night.
did. I just think they screwed it up and they threw J. Allen Hynek under the bus because they make him look like a stupid moron who was not. He was
Uh,
not that.
oh yeah. No, what I was getting to though was Lasha's question about human mutilation. They had a part in that episode last night where the body was mutilated, and there definitely has been a number of cases reported, some in South America, some in Europe, where which is a pretty scary thing. So you figure, well, are they just opening up people because they're interested in what makes us tick, or like what we do with animals sometimes? Who knows?
Hmm. Hmm. Except
Scary
I don't
stuff.
think these implants are just for tracking. Yes, in the 80s, of course I thought that because our technology was limited. But when you look at how insane our technology is now, it's safe to assume that these tracking devices, which by the way, I'm sure you know this, people who've had their implants removed, the ETs can find them still. It's that doesn't change. But I think the tracking devices serve far more than tracking implants. They can either be sending you thoughts, reading your thoughts to send back to them, and using our five senses. So whatever we touch, smell, taste, I think those signals also go to them. And then there's stuff that I don't think we even know or will know anytime soon that these
Well,
implants do.
that's for sure. That's for sure. But one of the other things that we found in the study was that the brain generally and the temporal lobes and the limbic system more particularly play a mediating role in the anomalous experiences such as abduction. This in no way implies that abductions are all and only in the abductees' heads. Rather, it points to the likelihood of temporal lobe lability meaning open to change,
Hmm.
as a preset or a precursor to extraordinary experiences. While it would be too reductionistic to claim that the brain creates such experiences, it is not far-fetched to think that the brain plays an important part in the who and the what of extraordinary experiences and how they are interpreted. Uh, and that's a very interesting thing because, you've probably heard the term antenna people,
Yeah, yeah.
and you know, are these people in their temporal lobes limbic system set up a little bit differently to be able to communicate. Um, so this is an area that we were able to look at only at the surface, and probably needs further examination, and hopefully at some point we'll be able to come up with enough dollars to do a more thorough study in this regard. I actually sent this information to his name is professor over at Stanford University. You can help me with his name. I'm blanking on it right
I'm
now.
gonna blank on it too, because
I'll come up with it.
I have several
we're
friends that attended, whether it be their law school, their undergraduate, or their medical school, and the amount of professors I was told over the years, I wouldn't remember. Now, if I was there, you bet your ass I'd remember, But even now, 20 years after I went to UCSB, 11 years after I graduated from 2 law schools, I remember most of the professors off the bat, but I will have a brain fart here and there. Be like, the name is eluding me. Let me get back to you. Okay, real quick, another question for you that's been sitting here.
Yeah.
This is from Tammy George. How does he think they choose to whom they take? Interesting question.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's generational in a lot of cases, where it's not just, a person. It could be the mother, the grandmother, the grandfather. In a lot of cases, it's generational, where they're looking at
if your parents were taken, chances are your grandparents.
It's like an experiment.
And you will be. Exactly. And, so you mentioned Kathleen Martin, right? And I know Betty and Barney Hill didn't have children together, at least, right?
Right.
And so when this last Tuesday was the first time I spoke to Kathleen about her own abductions, which she just recently said. And I said, is it because your aunt and uncle? And she goes, actually, it's not just that, but my own mother, who's Betty Hill's sister, was a regular abductee. So yes, you're absolutely right, and I guarantee you it's going to continue going down the family lines. Kathleen Martin's children, grandchildren, and so on and so forth.
So the professor at Stanford, Dr. Gary Nolan.
Wasn't he in the movie Sirius? Dr. Gurr Sirius?
I believe so.
Yes, I know.
Anyway, I sent this to him. This study, and then he asked me if he could send it to Kit Green and Hal Puthoff. So I don't know if you're familiar with those two people.
I am.
Okay, so who knows? If they're not already looking at some of this more in depth. But it would be. I was hoping to get some kind of a feedback, but of course that didn't happen.
Yeah, I know.
But that's not
Especially
surprising.
when they're a tenured professor at a school like that, which still considers things a psychiatric problem. John Mack, I feel so sorry for the poor guy, because he took so much shit when he started really diagnosing this as they're not delusional. These people have been taken and are suffering from PTSD. It took Daniel Sheehan to defend him, to keep his job.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show that the establishment does not want you talking about it, or definitely doesn't want their best professors spouting this. And that's why, even though he died in England by crossing a street and getting hit by a drunk driver, it just seems so improbable that. But now, could it happen? Absolutely. Did it happen randomly? More than likely. Is there a chance that something else was, shady in that equation? Sure, there always is.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you just don't know. It just seems so unusual that a lot of these people. I think there was a book out a number of years ago
Hmm.
that a gentleman wrote, and there was like 32 scientists that all of a sudden just kind of all died in a relatively short amount of time, which was highly
Wow.
unusual.
Yes,
But
yes.
anyway,
Well, if they didn't
so
have Ebola Zaire or something,
mm,
another crazy thing that
mm,
was in Fort Detrick and got loose,
yeah,
well, something is
hmm
seriously wrong if they were killed and they weren't on one plane,
you're right,
that
right.
went down.
Last last thing that in the study, and this will close this out, is that a more thorough investigation of abductees' experiences is warranted. These individuals are given both a gift or blessing and a penalty or curse that allows them to experience what the typical person cannot. They are
Hmm.
different. They are special. This study answered several questions but offered several others. For example, given the differences in how abductees experiences interpret their encounters, are there differences in the character, temperament, and or personality structure for those who remain troubled by their experiences and those who appear to see them as positively transformative? Are there temporal lobe and limbic system differences between such individuals, since there was a common link among participants in both groups, an acceptance of aliens and of human alien contact? Are there differences between such individuals and the more typical curious or incurious members of the general public? These and other questions must be addressed and answered. Anyway,
Ah, I
the psychologist that was involved with this was a Dr. Robert Lelouvre, and he was a professor actually at Great Falls University in Montana,
mhm.
and actually had a class on UFOs there, and
Oh,
he did a fantastic job. Unfortunately, he passed away.
oof.
Here's another guy that's gone.
I know, right? Knock on
Um,
wood. That's so
and we
sad.
were supposed to do the next study, and unfortunately, we never got to it. Oh
And
well.
because of his passing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Because he was a real driving force in all this. I was the one that facilitated it all by bringing the people together and getting the funding, and he was the one that crunched the numbers and uh, used all the instruments that we utilized. We had 8 different instruments that we had the people go through and answer questions, etc., and come up with the statistical analysis that was done. And so it was a good study, but and we need to go further.
Yeah, yeah, definitely so, and I was glad to find out that Kathleen Martin is involved now with the MUFON group. I don't know the name. I think you just said it about the abduction
ERT,
group.
ERT,
That, thank you.
ERT.
Yeah, and she said to date, so far, there's been over 5,000 different people that they've, talked to, and because before you even can walk in and go to a group, she says they have to make sure you are an abductee, and there's you could probably explain this more, that they have to vet you in multiple ways before they realize, okay, you are an abductee and you should be here for us to study and help.
Yeah, and I think that the instruments that we utilized were quite extensive,
Hmm.
and the there's actually 8 of them. The one is called the Childhood Experience Inventory,
Hmm.
the Home Environment Questionnaire, the Wogan Psychological Inventory, the Psychophysical Changes Inventory, the Kundalini Scale, the
Hmm.
Life Changes Inventory, the Religious Beliefs Inventory, and the Opinion Inventory. And with all of those different instruments, you go through, and if, you know once a person goes through all of that, and we look at that, we can pretty much tell what's going on. Is this person fabricating things? Are they telling the truth?
Or are they
Uh,
really telling you what they've seen in their own words?
yeah,
And
Exactly.
going
Exactly.
back to what you earlier said about people who don't want abductions anymore, I got a number from Kathleen Martin from E.R.T, based on E.R.T, when she
Uh-huh.
pulled them all. If you had an opportunity to stop being taken, would you? And 71% said they would not. They have grown to appreciate their abduction experiences. And many times, there's usually one on board who is not an AI or a glorified robot. That is a real ET that seems to show more compassion, show them around the ship, answer questions, and things like that. And I think, I not just think, I know this. For instance, Kathleen Martin said she started to, be bonding with that ET. So each
Hmm.
abduction, even though there was the sentries, the smaller grays that did the work, and then the praying mantis type that would be the surgeon, it was the other taller gray that would, always embrace her and communicate with her telepathically and, answer her questions. And I know a lot of people who feel that way. Nothing in the world would they want to change this extraordinary experience. Even Whitley
Well,
Strieber,
here.
very, very scared in the first several years, decades even, until he finally realized and accepted that this is a gift.
Well, I think it's a journey that these people that start.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, it's extremely upsetting. It's traumatic.
Oh God, yeah.
Then
If you're raped
and
and
then
with by
and yeah,
monsters.
and then you come to accept it, okay? And then when it stops, people wonder, well, why?
They miss
Why
it.
is it stopped?
Yeah.
Yeah, in a way, it's almost like the Stockholm syndrome.
Yep. When you're
It's
kidnapped,
just,
exactly, you eventually start caring for your captors.
hmm
I
exactly. So,
There's a follow-up question from Tammy, and I just want to get it to you before we get too far. She says, "What's he think about religion and aliens now, 2020 now, as opposed to 40 years ago?"
that's a good question. I think that my own particular view on all this is that when you look out into the universe, there's there's such order, mathematical order in the universe that you would think that somebody somewhere is running the show.
I agree. I
and
agree. That's right.
and and whether you call that person God or Allah or the Great Spirit or whatever you want to do it, I think that you know I certainly believe. Even now, the Roman Catholic Church has come out and says, "Yeah, it's no problem,
They'd
big
baptize
deal."
an ET. You remember that?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So I think they're also paving the way because they're no longer saying, Jesus was the savior of Earth. They now say universe. So they've
Mm.
clearly expanded it like as if they knew something we don't. And who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Were some of these past popes ETs like Akhenaten with giant heads? Is this why things are so secret in the Vatican catacombs where they will not let anybody go there unless you're a cardinal or I don't even know if cardinals are allowed there. I know the Pope and his cardinal assistants are allowed, but I know it's very off limits.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with who who can go in there, but
Well,
the
the
bottom line is
Pope
that yes,
and
they
of
they
course
they've
his
certainly changed their minds about how they look at this whole thing, and it was a big question years ago, as your questioner had mentioned that we live in different times now, and I think our worldview has definitely changed, and one for the better, I think.
now of the mainstream real abduction cases: Betty Barney Hill, Travis Walton, Calvin Parker, and Charlie Hickson Pascagoula incident. The Allagash Four. Just these are just off the top of my head, not including
Mm-hmm.
several others. Which one do you think, um, to you personally, was more intriguing than the others? Because I could tell you what
Mm.
the answer is. To me, it's the Allagash Four. That's when I really started to understand missing time. The fact that they went into the water, saw a craft, then were very frightened, started, rowing back as fast as they could back to their shore, to their bonfire, and then they see the craft leave, and then the fire is almost out, like it had been, they were gone for 6 hours, and yet, to their recollection, it was 5, 10, 15 minutes.
Right.
And the
Yeah.
fact that they all
It's
started having dreams of the identical thing, too. All of them being on ships, naked, three at a time, were sitting, like on a bench against, if you want to call it, the wall of the craft, whatever it be. And then at
mm-hmm.
least one was always on, a table being, physically, tested. Or the fact that all of them independently had these same dreams, saying, I saw my brother on the bench, and me and the other two guys were not talking, not moving, just sitting naked, looking like we were paralyzed. So that to me is one of the more mainstream, even shown on Unsolved Mysteries, that I really, really love that case so much, and I have yet
Yeah, I think
to interview
when you
any of
have
them.
that many people involved with it and all coming back and telling basically the same story, unless it's a total fabrication, it doesn't seem very likely that it is, because of the trauma that they've all experienced with that. Travis Walton's case, it was a single,
Yeah, but he does
situation,
have
him
five
by himself.
witnesses that he approached this
Yeah.
craft, and the craft got louder, and something was shot against him. I think his current explanation that he wasn't taken because they were malicious, but I think that he walked, like he said, he got scared and he ran across behind the craft,
Hmm.
and he probably caught the propulsion, which blasted him back, I think, up 20 feet or so, unconscious, and they assumed he was dead and they left. None of these guys wavered, even when they had to go, take, lie detector tests, polygraphs. Only one guy failed, not about the what they saw on the mountain, but about his criminal life, because I think he had an open warrant. But the
Yeah,
point is,
exactly.
you got the other. It was total six with Travis, right?
Hmm.
So you have four, completely cleared on their polygraph, and then the fifth guy failed questions regarding his criminal past and a possible open warrant, but he was not, so nervous when talking about the abduction, or, Travis being up there with a weird craft, and then when they went back, he was not there, and so he passed that. So five individual people pass polygraphs. Travis comes back after 5 days thinking he's been gone a couple hours because he had a full grown beard, a weeks long beard when he touched his face. And then he passes multiple polygraphs. I think the last time I spoke to him, I think he said four at this point.
Yeah, at least I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, we have
yeah.
a bunch.
So, I mean, how many does it
So
take before people start believing? Is this free? It's just a scary thing that people don't believe it, no matter what you're doing.
yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
So let me continue on uh, how so we have this support group in San Jose, right?
Mhm.
And I got written up in the Monterey Coast Weekly paper, and a woman calls me from Carmel, California, saying, I'm in touch with off-earthly entities, and I like to see what's going on with my brain waves when this is happening. And I'm saying to myself, well, how the hell do I do that? And I had a doctor friend of mine, Dr. Eugene Lipson, and I said, you know what? We ought to go down there and listen to what this woman has to say. And what really got me more interested is that she said she was working with an emergency room doctor down at Carmel Hospital. And so we went down there, and she had become psychic after a near-death experience. And she started to tell us things about ourselves that there was no way that she could possibly. We didn't know her from anybody. And she started telling us things about ourselves that there was no way that she could possibly know. And we came away from there saying, how can we possibly help people like this, And that's when OPUS was hatched. This is 1994. And, we're a nonprofit organization, a 501c, recognized by the federal government. You believe that? That's an amazing
26
thing.
years and going. 94, yeah.
Yeah. And so when we went into this woman's house, she had a newspaper clipping on the wall, and she was standing on board some kind of a boat, and some guys around her. And I said, "What's this all about?" And she says, "Oh, we were hunting for a treasure in the Caribbean." And really, I said, and so what happened? And she says, well, I got in touch with the captain of the galleon. And I said, what? Yeah, and he was helping us find a location of where the ship went down. Now, that was pretty much the story. I didn't get to talk too much more about it because she wanted to talk about, the aliens that she was in contact with. But I mean, these are the kind of things you run into and kind of blow you away in such, regards that, like, here's a psychic basically. And what is that all about? That's a whole nother ball game where people can look at the past, the present, and the future. So time is not an issue.
Irrelevant. It's a human thing.
Yeah. So I mean, this is just absolutely fascinating stuff. I mean, because it takes you into all these parts of the puzzle, which I like to call them, poltergeist activity. Spiritual issues, Kundalini awakening. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Remote viewing. People being able to do that. That's another fascinating
topic. Insane
topic.
When you really think about it. I spoke to Russell Targ several months ago after he had a new documentary, Third Eye Spies, right? And
right.
Did you see that?
I have not, but I definitely want to see it.
Well, there's this one.
No, you know what? I did see it. I did see it.
So do you remember when I don't know who was remote viewing in this instance, but they remote viewed like 75 years earlier. Remember the water plant?
Yep.
I mean, that just goes to show you that time is irrelevant when it comes to things like this.
Okay. I got a question for you.
Sure.
Okay. I'm absolutely, not really a question, but I'm going to put something out there to your audience and to you. I am fascinated with the pre-Inca civilizations and how they built those stone structures, how those massive stones were laid together so precisely, interlockingly, just unbelievable.
It
how they
really
did that.
is. Some of these stones that were built in the ancient Inca, because if there's a certain wall in Peru where it shows the lowest
Yes.
level, remember, and that lowest level is so perfect you couldn't, stick the
Mm-hmm.
smallest sheet of paper in between the rocks. The next one is the Incas that were after that,
Yeah.
which is kind
Right.
of crap, it's just a bunch of rocks thrown together. But it's the bottom, the oldest part of the wall, where it's so perfect.
Oh, it's amazing. And what I was thinking, all right, was why can't we have some remote viewers take a look at that and say, how did they do that? You know,
Or did
there's a
they?
there's
Was
a
it the ETs that did it too?
it's just fascinating to me. Absolutely fascinating.
It
How
makes two
and
of
there
us, and actually a lot more than two of us. Everybody who's seen that in Ancient Aliens or the Watcher series, and of course everyone who's participating in the chat, I know for a fact. But it
oh,
is.
it's
It
just
really is. I deserve something like that. Should be the focus of remote viewing, and so should other anomalies. Like every ancient not color. Every ancient civilization talks about the gods from above that came down and gave them wisdom and technology and things like that. Well, it sounds to me the gods from above are ETs.
well, I tell you this this guy by the name of Stephen Schwartz. It's actually his first name is spelled Stephan. Stefan, I guess maybe Schwartz. He's one of the first remote viewers. He was one of the first guys that really got into this stuff. And he wrote a book called The Secret Vaults of Time,
Mm,
which is absolutely fascinating, and how psychics were used to do archaeological digs.
makes sense. Yeah. As a matter of fact, speaking of that, they used Uri Geller to fly in a plane and using remote viewing or whatever he was doing, he would pinpoint down, in the plane, like say, okay, dig there, and they found oil.
Yeah, yeah. I was involved with a guy in California that did exactly that
Wow.
because we were looking for a crashed UFO in Utah.
Ooh, you know what? You just opened the door to one of my favorite topics. I love contact and abductions, but just as much equally, I love crash and retrieval because it's not just a handful. I've come to see that there are a lot around this world.
There seems to be. There
Yeah.
absolutely seems to be. Matter of fact, I got Linda Howe involved with one of the cases, and she got McMonagle involved,
Hmm.
and he said yes, that he saw that this area probably did have a crash, but the only thing with remote viewing, it's really difficult to pinpoint time frame.
Yes, yes, I
You
agree.
know,
I
whether
definitely
it's
agree.
so. Anyway, so if anybody out there is listening that is psychic and wants to look at how these ancient walls were done in Peru, let me know.
Yeah, right. Let both of us know. That's something
Yeah,
that merits not secrecy or one email, like an announcement. Something major because at that point, Les, I'm gonna call you and we're gonna do a show, the three of us, and we're gonna, just get to the bottom of every detail he can remember.
absolutely, absolutely.
Now,
All
are
right.
are you a hypnotherapist that hypnotizes the people that are coming into those groups like Opus?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the first part of what you said.
Are you a hypnotherapist?
No, I am not.
But you
No, I
employ
work.
a hypnotherapist or a volunteer
Yeah,
to do the regressions for these people, right?
Yeah, we have a list of hypnotherapists that we work with,
Hmm.
and and that constantly gets updated. And so when somebody is looking for that, matter of fact, today I had a person contact us through our website, which is opusnetwork.org, uh, that was looking for professional help, and then I also at the same time tell them that it would be probably beneficial for them to also join the confidential online support group as well, which tends to be such a plus for people, with these types of experiences. But yeah, we do have a list of hypnotherapists, and we share that with people, and some places, depending upon where they're located, we might not have anybody locally. So there are some people that are able to do hypnotherapy, I guess, over Skype, and it's probably not as effective, but evidently it does work. So that's a good thing to know.
Yeah, very, very, very much. Now, three DoD films came out in 90 or 2017, 2018, around there, right?
Hmm.
What's the significance of this to us now? Because in when this happened, I was in the hospital. Unfortunately, it was on the mainstream news. I turned to the nurse and said, "I don't know what you know about ETs and UFOs or how open your mind is, but I want you to look at the news because this is what I call soft disclosure."
Hmm. I think it's very significant. Um, for me, you know, it's a process, and it's not going to be like one day. It's just going to, you know, somebody's going to snap their finger and oh yeah, okay. It's going to be this gradual opening up, like a flower, and then when it's fully open, then yeah, that's disclosure.
Yeah, no, we're
But
we're not gonna have them landing on the White House lawn. I mean, we everybody has to accept that. The closest we had was in 1952 when they flew over the Capitol twice.
yeah, yeah, that that couldn't get much better than that.
I know, especially twice. They get the cameras,
Yeah.
they film and take pictures of the first one. While they're there, or whatever they're doing, they come back, do the second flyover. Now, let me ask you about this because we're talking about the Capitol building. What do you know about the Eisenhower meeting with the ETs in 1954?
I only know what I've heard. So, and probably like what everybody else has heard, that, supposedly this craft landed, and this alien got out and they had a conference, and, there was some agreement made at that time regarding utilizing some of their technology, and them utilizing some of our people. That's all I know. I mean, I haven't really delved into that case very much. Again, basically because of my main focus has been to basically helping abductees, and trying to relieve the pressures, if you will, of what's gone on in their lives.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's pressure, which is why they now use the term PTSD for abductees because you know if I'm sleeping and all of a sudden I'm paralyzed and I start floating through my wall or window onto a craft and see monsters that I don't recognize, and I still can't move, and they're starting to do things like that harm me. Like, well, are painful, not harm, but are painful, like sticking an implant in
Sure.
me or whatever it be,
Mhm.
I'm going to be
Mhm.
scared. I'm going to be so
Of course.
scared through that, I'll almost have a heart attack. And then when I come back, whatever I remember, it's definitely going to have, I'm going to have signs of, post-traumatic stress syndrome for sure.
Sure. Well, let me play a couple of audios for you.
Sure. Let's make
Here.
sure we can hear them.
Let me set this up. Let me set this up.
Yeah.
These are people that initially had contacted MUFON.
Mm-hmm.
These audios go back a number of years, and then that audio was forwarded to me, and then I contacted these people and asked them, what it is that they were looking for. So I may disconnect here.
Okay,
And
hang on one second. Let
yeah.
me just let you know if for some reason we can't hear them because
Yeah.
if I had the files, I
Yeah.
could play them, but you wouldn't know they're playing, but they would, people could hear them. If we
Yeah.
can't hear them, if there's a way that
Yeah.
I can get them real quick, are you getting them from a website or where?
No, they're on one of my presentations.
Oh, okay.
So
Let's
yeah,
give it a
so
shot.
you should be able to hear it.
Let's
Yeah,
give it
let's
a
give it a shot,
shot,
and
and if
we'll
it
go from
doesn't
there.
work, I'm gonna just call you right back. If you disconnect. If you we can't if so
Okay.
everybody out there, I'm asking you, since I'm gonna probably be able to hear what Lester's gonna play. If you guys can't hear what he's about to play, I need you to tell me so we could figure it out because I think it's relevant for you to hear what he's about to play. Okay, go for it.
So like I say, now what I've done is there any pertinent information that I thought would be like their phone numbers and things of that nature, I've scrambled it. So
Yeah,
it's going to
yeah.
sound a little funny.
No worries.
But anyway, I wanted
So
to keep their
you're
anonymity
playing
here.
this off something and using your microphone, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah,
you should be able to hear it.
we'll be able to hear it. Yes. Go for it.
Okay, hold on a second here. Let's see. Where'd it go? All right.
It was really, really low. And we didn't think much of it. Then in the next 10 minutes, we just see a big flash of light come through the woods, and we had no idea what it was. Dropped our fishing poles. We had a lantern for light, and it's completely it lit the area up like it was daytime. And the next thing I know, I hear a noise. All of a sudden, I wake up. I'm laying on a metal platform of some sort. I have needles in my arm. I'm strapped to this platform with leather straps around my ankles and arms, and my head is also strapped down. I couldn't move my head. I was just woozy, and I woke up and my eyes were blurry, but I seen like figures. There was 6 of them, and there was really, really, really bright lights over top, and I couldn't see too clearly, and the bright lights made it worse, and I just seen 6 figures standing around me, like they were shaped sort of like humans, but I could tell they weren't human. And this was the scariest experience you could ever imagine. And to this day, I can't explain it, why and how or anything. Then I wanted to ask questions, but I couldn't speak. I couldn't say anything. The next thing I know, I felt something on my head, as if it was a hand or something with fingers and holding me down. And the next thing I know, I passed out again. I can't really explain much more than that. I woke up. I was right back where my fishing pole was. My uncle, he wasn't there, and I woke up. I called him, picked me up. I told him what happened. He didn't believe me. I just this is, I don't know, but my name is Girlfish. Again, my phone number is 1874. You can call me if anything. If I don't answer, please leave a voicemail, and I'll be sure to get back to you. Thank you.
And that's such a typical a message.
Yeah,
that
I
one
could
gets.
tell that was a voicemail. That's why he left his phone number.
Yeah.
And it
yeah.
was scrambled,
So,
like you said, so he's protected.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's a younger guy, and he had just an absolutely scary situation. It was just unbelievable. Let me play one more here.
Absolutely.
Let's see.
Hi, my name is Diane Bach. My phone number is 6548. I'm calling because I called 3 months ago. An investigator was supposed to call me back, and he never called me. It's about my daughter. She's 9, and she had a very strange, she doesn't know if it was a dream or real. She said it felt real, very, very detailed experience. Sound like an abduction experience, and all the testing they did and everything. And then she woke up with these strange markings, and it's happened. The markings she's woke up with 5 times now. First it was her both hands. The second time it was both feet. The third time it was hands and feet. The fourth time it was her right hand and right foot, and this time it was her left hand and left foot. And this was Sunday morning. I have pictures and video of them, and I need to see what y'all think about it. It's just weird. The doctors have no clue what the things on our hands and feet are. Very weird. Please give me a call back. I really want to know what it is. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, and that's the sad part.
Polite, intelligent, right? She's not freaking crazy. I don't get where people just assume freely. Because, see, I'm the black sheep among my friends and family. I mean, I'm not talking about friends involved with this show or this field, but, personal friends I grew up with. None of them believe anything. Yeah, I mean, even when I show them, look, okay, so try to explain away these DoD films. Well, they say, well, we admit something's there, but we don't know what it is. Well, really? Okay, well, something that's acting intelligently, far superior to our technology. Well, what do you think? It's something by nature that's making something like a swamp gas? I mean, so yeah.
And Venus. Don't forget Venus. Don't forget Venus.
That's right, Venus, or you're seeing Mars, or whatever it be. Just crap. So now she was talking about her son, right?
Yeah, her daughter, I guess. Yeah, it was her daughter.
It's
yeah,
just
that's the hard thing. Because a lot of these people, I mean, the families are affected, and or you have a mother who's actually been abducted and she knows it, and then she doesn't want it to happen to her children, and then it does happen, and then this is that generational thing that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty complex. Let me go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, because we started about 15 minutes late, and it is 10 to 7 Pacific time. Can we go at least say 23 minutes longer from now?
Oh, from now, sure.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. So anyway, I'm going to play another one here. I don't know which one this is, but we'll give it a shot.
They're all good, so let's hear it.
My name is I live in Chicago, Illinois, south suburb of. I believe my boyfriend and I experienced an abduction about a month ago. We both, at the moment afterwards, contacted a couple of sites online to no avail. It's been sticking with me, so I decided to research again on my own. Found your website. My phone number is A.R.S. 0777 in brevity, and I will speak more if I talk to somebody about it. I strongly prefer not to email it. I'm not a big typer. It bores me. I'd rather talk about it. The basis of it was me and my boyfriend were playing pool about a month ago in my basement. And we just wrapped up a game. I remember I'm a smoker, cigarette smoker, and I went to go light up a cigarette. And I remember taking my cigarette and putting it in my mouth, went to go take my first shot for pool, and then all of a sudden it was like a flash, and we came back. And the cigarette was gone, and that was the first thing that we both just stared at each other, and we were like, well, what? What was that? Kelly, where's your cigarette? I don't know. And all of a sudden we just started panicking about a cigarette for some reason. Even though we felt something changed or something, there was some kind of fluctuation. We ran around the room, both panicked, looking for a cigarette in the pockets of the pool table, everywhere. And, absolutely gone. The whole cigarette disappeared. Eventually, we found 2 cigarette butts laying in the corner of the room. Because he had one too, but his was almost done. And they were burnt out, the butts. We ran. I'm very familiar with this. I've researched this. I've never thought I could be an abductee. I've always been interested in this stuff since I was 20, and now I'm 31. I remember going to look at the time to see if any missing time had passed, and 15 minutes did. But that really didn't bother me as much as the fact that it felt like we flashed from 1 minute about to hit and break on the pool table to flashing back like another moment, like a time had passed. And I guess that's the best way that I can explain it to you, whoever you are. I haven't researched you or your foundation. But I'm reaching out because this is the first time that I have this has happened before, which, as I am familiar, if this has happened, it typically usually happens since childhood. This is the first time I have any memory of it. And my boyfriend, who I was with, never believed in this stuff, but he felt the exact same thing. So I don't know why it was very conscious for both of us. But it was. Whether this happened to me or him many times before, it was conscious at this time. We knew something happened. So I guess that's why I'm calling. And I would love to hear any feedback, maybe recommendations for hypnosis, anything, because this was a very disturbing experience for both of us. I'm not a skeptic. He is, but he isn't anymore after that. So again, my number is 808-0777.
So anyway,
Well,
that's another
let
one.
me say 2 things. First, it sounds like she was about to describe to you missing time.
Oh yeah.
And the second thing is I want to concur with Tammy George, who says you can tell in all their voices they're telling the truth. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
These are not stupid people, crazy, just loonies that are making shit up. They're telling you what they saw with their own words. and they wouldn't have taken the extra step to search you and then be brave enough to call you and then tell it like it is. So,
Yeah, there's no question about it.
so
It's
thank you so much for playing those because I'm glad we all got to hear them. Definitely the listeners as well as myself, and they were great.
yeah, these people are just had incredible experiences, and I'm so glad I was able to record those for posterity, basically.
Mm.
That to be able to hear people and to hear their voices, and how there's another gentleman that I recorded, and an older gentleman, and let me play that one because it's kind of interesting too.
Sure.
If we got time.
We have as much
All
time
right.
as you need. So don't worry.
Uh,
We can go after
okay.
as long as you want.
All right. Here we go. I think this is the one I'm thinking of. Here, we'll give it a shot.
Message from
Yeah, Smith. Here is Joanna. Hi, my name's Iris. My number's 3007. I'm 61 years old. I'd like to get something settled in my mind before I pass away. Back in around the 60s, I'm 99% sure that I was on a UFO, and I'd like to speak to someone that could maybe help me before I leave this gracious world. I prefer you to call around 10 in the morning until about 3 in the afternoon. I like to keep this as secret as possible for a while. And like I say, I'm 99% sure I was captured around the 60s. I'm 61 years old, and I'd like to get this settled in my mind before I leave this gracious earth. I don't know how or what to ask. I'd like to maybe be put to sleep and have you go into the back of my mind and see if this is true or if it's just something I dreamt up. Once again, my number's 5.
So,
Anyway,
you have an older gentleman there, which I appreciate because he's telling you something about 70 years ago.
Yeah, and so he didn't say hypnotherapy, but that's what he was talking about. Put me to sleep,
And get what's in the back of my mind, my subconscious. Yeah. Now, can I
Right.
ask you a question? How many calls like this do you get a week?
Oh, 2 to 3.
Wow. And it's never
Yeah.
changed, right? It's never on a decline because it seems to me like
It kind of goes in waves, especially like if there's events going on, or TV programs or something that triggers
that
people.
triggers their memory. Yeah.
And so, and I think what's going on right now is I'm getting a lot more than ever before, based on shows like Blue Book or
Ancient
Unidentified
aliens.
or Ancient Aliens or you name it. I mean, there's so many shows now that are talking about this kind of thing that and there are cases where certainly we've had some people call in that definitely you need to go see somebody else other than us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, for instance, Yvonne Smith, right? For the hypnotherapy. Or a psychiatrist.
Yeah, exactly. A psychologist
Gotcha.
or a psychiatrist, because it's pretty much out there, far out there.
So,
But
you started OPUS, you said again in 91?
94.
Okay, 94.
94.
Okay, so 26 years, and on average,
Right.
2 to 3 call messages a week, and it
Yep.
fluctuates based on what's going on. But essentially,
Right.
this is not stopped, which goes
No.
to show two major things. One, these people are not lying. You could, I mean, they wouldn't put themselves out there to someone they don't know personally unless they want answers. Okay, that's one. Two, we have so many abductees on this planet. That's why you're gonna keep getting new phone calls.
Oh yeah, for sure. And and one of the things that is gratifying, I guess, is the fact that we do get feedback from these people, and we try to help people as best we can, and they've come back and said, thank you very much for what we do, and so in that regard, it's something that keeps the ball rolling and gives us impetus to continue to do. There's been times in the past where I've said, okay, that's it, I'm done. I'm gonna just do something else, go play golf.
Yeah.
But and then the next thing I know, I get a phone call that just pulls me right back in, and I gotta keep doing it, and I want to keep doing it.
Well, you're helping people, and
Yeah.
in a lot of cases, people can't turn to their friends, their family. They can't go to many
Right.
psychiatrists unless they're going to be thrown in the
Yeah.
puzzle factory. They're really putting
Right.
their lives and reputations out there when they do this, and that's why I respect
Absolutely.
them so much.
Yeah. No, thank
Now,
you.
let me ask you this. What do you want to see in the future of ufology and the studies?
Well, I think there's two realms or two avenues I guess we could take. One is still the nuts and bolts part of it, because I think if we can understand how these things work and the energy sources that they utilize, that it could certainly benefit mankind in a huge way. And get us off fossil fuel, and make our planet a better place to live.
And make us able to go to any part of this multiverse in seconds.
Exactly, exactly. And then the other side of the coin is the human side, and the effects of these abductions on people, and what is the purpose of these abductions? Is it a hybridization program that they're doing because they need to take a sperm and eggs from people to populate this earth with hybrids in some way, shape, or form? Or is it something other than that? Is it an evolutionary process that's happening to humans right now,
It
messing with
actually
our
could be a
DNA?
combination of the two. Dr. Roger Lear, before he passed away, said that
Mhm.
the new children that are being born are not Homo sapiens. They're like Homo sapiens point two.
Mhm.
He called them Homo noeticus because they're just so
Mhm.
much smarter. It seems, and if you heard Bob Lazar when he said that we've undergone 63 external corrections in 10,000 years, well, it seems to me we're undergoing a fourth. Or are they just creating hybrids because they fear we're going to kill ourselves and they want to be able to repopulate Earth? Or the third option, what if they're trying to copy us, merge with their DNA so they could be superhumans, and then place them on another planet? Because I think it's kind of foolish to say Homo sapiens are not living on another planet because we've been brought there by ETs or whatever it be.
Yeah. I mean, the theories are multiple theories are possibilities. I mean, I don't think anybody. I don't know if you've ever read the the book Rachel's Eyes.
Oh my
Um,
God! Thank you for bringing that up. I haven't heard any. Linda, there's only a handful of books that when someone says read and I read, and whenever Linda recommends a book to me, I mean I'll get it the next day and I'll read it
Mhm.
nonstop. That was one of the books that she said you have to read. Now, for those of people who haven't read it, I think it's so important to tell the story. Can you briefly tell them about it?
Yeah, it's about a woman whose child was partially blind and had a roommate in college who was a hybrid.
That's
And
right. And her handler was a full bird colonel.
right, was a full bird colonel, and they had a base. Matter of fact, oh gosh, the story is incredible. Where I mean, this hybrid was getting special food to eat because she couldn't eat regular food. Deliveries were being made, and then Helen, who wrote the book, was taken to the base where they have teams that specifically are set up to retrieve crashes, and evidently there's crashes going on all the time.
That's right. Yeah. I even believe here in California, Needles, California, had a crash in 2008.
Uh-huh.
That's just 12 years ago.
So I mean, it's a very detailed book, and matter of fact, I want to try to find this base in Nevada.
Oh, hey, please do, Les, and when you do, let me know, and I'll meet you there. And you know what? If you track down Helen, please let me know. I'd love to speak to her on air. And if you want to be part of that conversation, oh, by all means, because you read the book just like me. Now, another detail I'm going to throw to everyone out is this hybrid that was living with the blind girl wore these big bug-eyed glasses, always floppy hats, always long sleeve clothing so she could be her skin fully protected. One time she tripped and fell. Her glasses fell, and Helen, to prevent her from hitting the ground, grabbed her by the arm. She said she felt no bone, as if the whole body was bone free. And she also got a look at the eyes, which were big.
Yeah, and there's a picture in her book. It's a typical kind of slanted eye type of a thing, gray alien type of an eye. Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
Yes.
Hey, Dr. J, I'm going to have to cut out.
No worries, no worries. A couple things real quick. I just want to tell you, first of all, hang by for a quick moment so I can thank you off air. I'll make this real short.
Okay.
One more thing. Plug in where people can find you.
Okay. Easiest way to contact me is through our website, which is opusnetwork.org. O.P.U.S. network.org. O-R-G. And there's a place in there where you can, contact. I get all the information from the website, so I'll see it, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Now, let me see my part. Get one final word from you, and I'll stop the stream and thank you off air. So, everybody, thank you for joining today. We have a little larger audience, which is cool because I could tell every time we talk about ETs, particularly abductions, you guys come in hordes, which I love. And I really appreciate the fact that all you folks that are participating and asking questions, and even I read everything. So just so you know, the comments between each other's I'm reading. And Tammy, I hope you got the name of the book. It's Rachel's Eyes. I highly recommend reading it. Now remember, folks, like, share, leave a comment, and super chat. You can't super chat me when I'm not doing a live stream, so keep that in mind. Now, also, I urge you after the stream is over, leave another comment because that actually helps the analytics. And remember, folks, if you want to get a hold of me, since my Twitter account's been banned for stupid reasons, go to Facebook to my account, and Pam Frettenberg is my social media manager. She's the one who runs my Facebook, and she will get back to you. And she will tell me that you're trying to get a hold of me, and then we'll arrange a phone call or something like that. So keep that in mind, folks. I won't be back till Monday, unless something extravagant happens this weekend where I do another stream for something. Other than that, folks, I want to thank you all for joining us this evening for Dr. J Radio Live. And before I go, I'm going to let my guest have the final word, which, Lester, if you had one final statement, comment, or even piece of advice for everybody, what would it be?
Well, I think what it would be is have an open mind. Help your fellow man as best you can. If you do run into somebody that's looking for help with an abduction, give them our website, and we'd be happy to help them as best we can.
I could not think of a better place to stop, folks. I will see you on Monday.